right, everyone. Thanks for tuning into the Sports Card Therapist, where I give you a behind the scenes look at my hobby hustle and sprinkling some self care and wellness on top of that. I'm Rob Gerard, your Sports Card Therapist. And whether if you're listening on iTunes, Spotify, or watching on YouTube, welcome to the podcast. And this is episode 217. And one thing that I want to throw out there is that it is going to be round table season coming up, round table season approaching. I haven't even talked to my guest who I have on today about the round tables, but I'm going to keep it a secret, but I actually have him down for a round table. I haven't even asked him if he would be willing to do it. And that would actually be his third appearance this season. So I'm putting a lot on this gentleman's plate, but I want to welcome back once again, Adam Gray, who is the Real 27 guy on Instagram, for really a follow-up or part two of what our discussion was a couple of weeks ago. So Adam, welcome back. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me again. It's funny, last time we thought we were going to have this nice little conversation about acquiring this big card, and then we just went off the rails from the very beginning and we went with it, and I didn't know if we'd actually make it happen again, so I'm glad we did.
Yeah, without a doubt, man. And I cannot wait to get into the card. I can't wait to talk about the card, how significant it is, what made you chase this specific card. But before that, if you're watching on YouTube, you will see in the background the newest issue of Basketball Card Fanatic magazine. I got mine in the mail last week. Some tremendous articles. So just talk to me for a minute about the magazine, what the end goal is for the Basketball Card Fanatic magazine, or do you have an end goal? Is it forever evolving? Talk to me about what the true vision was in the beginning and if it's changed at all to right now.
The end goal is the same as it's always been, and that's been to provide people who are really collecting fanatics, people who love the cards, some sort of content that is different than what they're seeing out there, right? It's something that is really about the cards. There's a lot of card content, right? And most of it's awesome, but there's actually not a lot that's about cards. A lot of it's about pricing. A lot of it's about the hobby as a whole, like our culture. It's about all sorts of different stuff. But I always try to focus the content on the cards themselves, and that's what the whole magazine's about. We issue monthly. And this is really our end goal, is to provide, our small group of 450, 500 subscribers, the experience that they have of the nostalgia of like receiving that hard copy in the mail, opening it up, reading through it, sort of like learning about different things that are going on in the hobby, the different cards, the different things that they could know about. And the really fun part about it, Rob, is like, I had a guy message me just yesterday. He was like, hey, I really am interested to know how I can write for your magazine. I have this thing that I've been collecting and I want to be able to talk about it. What do I do? And I was like, cool. We have a conversation about like what he's collecting and what his angle is on what he wants to write. And then if he wants to write for the magazine, he writes. We go through it. We perfect it. We make it as nice as we possibly can for him. And we have a design team that does an amazing job of putting the whole thing together. And then you get this thing that like goes out to your friends, and you can have it mailed out to your friends, and it goes to card shops, goes to dozens of card shops. And so this really is our end goal. We knew when we started it was never going to be something we were going to like sell. We can't sell. You can't sell a magazine like a company, right? It's not the smart thing to do in 2023 to have a magazine. It's not, but it's fun and we love it. So we keep doing it.
Yeah, man. And it feels like there's been I don't want to say a push for it, but I have noticed a couple people in the hobby taking more of a vested interest in putting together written content. And whether if it's a newsletter, whether if it's like a blog or something along those lines. But I tell you, when I get your magazine in the mail, and this isn't to try to pump your magazine by any means, but when I get your magazine in the mail, it does bring me back to getting Beckett's in the mail. It brings me back to that feeling of getting Beckett's, because I wouldn't even compare it to like getting a Sports Illustrated in the mail, because the Sports Illustrated is about the sports, whereas your magazine is strictly about the cards, the same way that Beckett was. So, the quality of the magazine, everything about it is awesome, man. So I just really, wanted to give you your kudos on that.
Dude, I'm so glad that you would take a couple minutes to talk about it. I'm sure there's some people who stopped listening in this process because not a lot of people, again, 2023 is not a magazine time. It really isn't. But that nostalgia factor that you just talked about, Rob, like I feel like it's a labor of love. I really do. It's not, we don't really make a lot of money off the magazine. Our sponsors are the only reason we're able to continue to do it. And we've worked really hard at it, but it was never about like, selling it or making it into something that like that people would look at and go, oh wow, like this is the coolest. Like it really is about having individual collectors sort of have a wonderful experience with a hobby that's about the cards. And I couldn't be more proud of it. It's taken so many hours of my life, and then that part I question sometimes. But dude, it's so much fun. So anyway, thanks for taking a few minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get to the topic, right? The topic is, and this is a title that I titled the episode because I feel like I do want to really get inside your mind in terms of how you acquired this. But, so the topic, the episode title is How to Acquire a Grail 101. And I want to know, tell me about this Grail that you acquired. What was it about this card that you said, this is the Kobe Bryant I want? This is the card that I'm truly going to start making some huge moves as far as my collection for. Talk to me about it. And by the way, congratulations on getting it. I should have started with that. Congrats, but unbelievable card. I can't wait to hear you talk about it.
Thank you for the lead in, and thank you for the congratulations. I'm a Kobe Bryant collector. I had some pretty big Kobe Bryant cards all the way back to like 2015. One of the biggest cards I ever owned was the Eminence Championship Tag autograph inscription. It's number 92, incredible. And I sold it for other Kobe Bryant cards. I actually traded it for cash and for cards. So I've been a Kobe collector for a long time, but when he passed away in 2020, I think I had an experience like a lot of people did where I sort of thought about like what Kobe meant to the sport and what he meant to me. It's interesting as a Jazz fan, like the Jazz and Kobe are really connected, like a lot of franchises are, right? The Jazz were the first team that just destroyed Kobe in the playoffs. People don't remember this, but his rookie season, he had 4 air balls in a big game against the Utah Jazz. And that Jazz team went on to the finals to lose to Michael Jordan, the Bulls. And then he lost again the next season to the Jazz. And then later, the Jazz ended up on the other side of that. Were one of the best teams that we've had in a couple of decades. The Darren Williams, Carlos Boozer team that was really good. They made it to a conference finals and they won a lot of playoff series. They just couldn't deal with that Lakers team. Kobe was just unstoppable. So I couldn't stand Kobe in a lot of ways for a long time, which is funny because it's the exact same way that I felt about Michael Jordan. I couldn't stand him, right? But when Kobe passed away, you sort of start realizing, man, like I don't know if there's anybody who I've spent more time watching than that guy. I don't know if there's anybody who I've spent more time listening to, and started like realizing, man, this guy is like sort of like maybe the guy of an era, and I didn't realize it the whole time. And as I sort of thought through that after he passed away, I just realized like I want to own really great Kobe Bryant cards. And so, I mean, I've got like a pretty cool. I don't want to be too self-defacing here. I've got a really nice Kobe Bryant collection. I have the first gold prism, 2012. It's number 1 of 10, so it's really the first one. The first silver prism autograph. I've got his first autograph patch, which is from 2000. It's numbered out of 8. One of his nicest limited logos. I've got all of the big rookies. I've got all the like most of the big Kobe cards and lots of really rare, awesome stuff. And I love Kobe. I don't want to sell any of that stuff. But along the way, I sort of realized something with him, which is that he has so many autographs. And I've talked about this on my podcast, the Basketball Card Podcast. He has so many autographs that the question wasn't for me, like, how do I get a Kobe Bryant autograph? It was like, which Kobe Bryant autograph cards matter? And then as an extension to that, which autographed patch cards matter? And for me, what matters the most are some of the autograph patches that are early, that maybe are even earlier than exquisite, that are super rare, and that are like just clearly the best pieces ever. And so that's my lead into, like, 6 months ago, 8 months ago, there was
Let
more.
me just stop you
Oh,
real
sure.
quick
Go ahead. Yeah.
because you're touching on so many incredible things. I have so many things going on in my mind right now
Okay.
about how, in the playoffs when Kobe got beat twice in a row, 2 years in a row by the Jazz, that really the Jazz probably have played a small role in really stoking the flames inside of Kobe, right? And so that right there leaves some sort of, connection in my mind. And you're talking about now about the '03 Exquisite, right? You're talking about the '03 Exquisite set, which is obviously LeBron's RPA, his major RPA, really the big patch auto set of this generation of cards. So
That's
not only were you looking at that as okay, that's obviously one of them, one of the big cards, one of the big Kobe cards, but you're thinking, okay, historically, what do I think is going to be, or what do I feel like right now is truly gonna be Kobe's significant and most significant cards out there. So you're really going through this mental Rolodex, the history of not only Kobe's career, but the history of cards as well, to
that's
try
right.
to figure out where they intersect.
Yeah. So let me, as usual, when you and I get talking, you're such a good, you're Rob, you're so great at, like, bringing passion out of people. And so one thing that I didn't mention as part of this is I actually met Kobe his rookie season. I was an autograph seeker. Yeah. I was an autograph seeker, and my friend Chad, who runs the Pack to the Future podcast now, he can confirm all this. We went and we spent, like, days at the Hilton Hotel here in Salt Lake and tried, or was it the Hilton, or was it, no, it was Little America. It's Little America Hotel. And we just, like, spent days trying to, like, get Kobe and Shaq to sign stuff. Shaq was the biggest jerk. He wouldn't sign for anybody except for Chad's little sister, Brandy. Um, but Kobe was, like, the nicest guy ever. And in fact, we have this totally happened. I promise you this happened. Kobe went into a magazine shop there in the Little America Hotel, and he was looking for, we weren't allowed to follow him into the magazine shop. We had to give them their space in there. And then when he came out, he wasn't able to find anything, and he'd already signed 2 autographs for me. So I said, "Hey, Kobe," I'd had him sign 2 Beckett magazines. In fact, I've got one of them up there right now. You can go grab it. But I uh, I said, "Hey, I saw you didn't get a magazine." I said, "There wasn't anything you wanted to read. Do you want to take this?" And I handed him a Lakers. I can't remember who was on the front of it, but one of the Lakers on the front of a Beckett basketball magazine. And I gave it to Kobe, and he's like, "This is for me?" I was like, "Dude, totally, you can take it." And I mean, I was, what was I, 14 years old. So this was, was super young. And he's like, "Thanks, man." The next day we came back again. Kobe came down again, and there was a whole bunch of people there that at this point. There wasn't the first time, there was a whole bunch of people the second time. They probably weren't there so much the first time because it was really late. I mean, it was probably 1 o'clock in the morning, and 14-year-old Chad and Adam were just hanging out there at the hotel. But the second time he come, or that time he comes out, there's a whole bunch of people, and I was like, typical stupid 14-year-old. I was like, Kobe, do you remember me? I'm the guy who gave you the magazine yesterday. And he's like, "Yeah, of course." He's like, "Do you want it back?" And I was like, "No, don't worry about it." And it's like one of my great regrets, because maybe he could have gone up to his hotel on the elevator and then, like, gotten Shaq to sign it, or I don't know, maybe, I don't know what he would have done, but I just told him, no, don't worry about it. And then, of course, I never got the magazine back. But
Wow.
yeah, so that happened right before the airball game, and he could have been nicer. We took a picture with him that then it ended up not developing because it was on film. So many great stories. And yeah, so even though we had this great experience, then the hatred for him came because of how just because of who he was and how he played. And, like, everybody hated Kobe, right? He was such a killer, and he was so, like, macho, and I just couldn't stand him. There's so many of those Jordan things about him that I just couldn't stand. And so, yeah, back to your exquisite point, Rob. So at some point I realized I want to own one really, like, really crazy autograph patch of Kobe. And because there's so many autograph patches, there's only a few cards that really, like, hit my filter. And I'll tell you what they are. There's, like, 5 cards. One of them is the 2000 Ultimate Collection. It's the first year of Ultimate Collection. There's only 8 of the card in the world. I own the patch version, but not the patch auto. There's only 8 of the patch version, so I'm super glad to own that. But the autograph patch is just, It's the perfect card. I've had three. I've been the bridesmaid on it 3 separate times, and I just haven't been able to figure out a way to get it. The 8 of 8 that Spinatron owns, I almost bought that. I actually had a deal with that guy, but the guy who sold it was just a loser, and he actually agreed to a deal with me and Spino at the exact same time, and it was messed up. But he actually agreed with Spino before, and when Spino was able to point that out, I said, dude, take the card. I get it. But it was a killer because I really wanted that one. Another one is the 03 number pieces and the 04 number pieces, because those are the 2 years, Rob, where they're numbered 8. And although I love the pre-Exquisite era, the number pieces from Exquisite are the best set because they're numbered to their serial number to the player's jersey. And since Kobe was still wearing the number 8, that's just an elite card. They're both aesthetically incredible. I was the bridesmaid on an 04 a year ago at auction, and I was the bridesmaid on an 03 like two and a half years ago. They just don't pop up very often. They really never pop up, like the Ultimate Collection. So you've got 3 cards out of 8 that I just mentioned. I already have the 2000 Ultimate Collection or 2000 Upper Deck autograph patch out of 8, but I wanted to own one that one's a 1 color. It's a patch, but it's a 1 color. I wanted to own one that was like, holy crap, you have that card. Like that's the best. That's one of the best Kobe Bryant cards in the world. And so if you go back like 9 months, one was at auction, and that is the Logomania card. The Logomania was the very first Logo Man autograph set. It's the very first Logo Man set that Upper Deck did, and it was the same year that Topps did a simple Logo Man set too. But the Logomania set's weird because there's 9 cards in the set, and there's only 3 players, and the 3 players are Jay Williams, who was the big rookie that year, along with Yao. It was Michael Jordan, who was in a Wizards uniform because he was an active Wizard, right? It was made while Jordan was still a Wizard, so he needed to be featured as a Wizard. And then there's Kobe. What's really interesting about this, Rob, is that it's the only time Upper Deck, the base Upper Deck set, ever put Logo Man cards in a product. It was the first time, and it was the only time. These 9 cards. Nick Sapiro has a really cool story about when he was working with Heritage, how somebody called him and was like, "Hey, I've got this card that I pulled from 20 years ago. Like, I'm wondering if I can sell it through you." And it was one of the Jordans. On the front of the box is a Kobe Logomania. It's one of the 3, and it's the 3 that's never been seen publicly. Ironically, the one that's on the box to sell the cards has never been seen, but the other 2 have been seen. And the 2, there's one that's in really nice shape. It's a BGS 9. He's wearing a headband in like a retro Lakers jersey. That one's a lot better condition, so I think most people probably prefer that one over the one that I ended up winning. But the reason that I really like mine, other than the fact that it's the first Logo Man, and that in and of itself is awesome, is the image of Kobe is typical Kobe. I like that more than the retro one, because although it's not nearly in as good a condition, mine has some bricking where it likely stuck together with another card on both the front and the back. You can see it and you kind of go, it's too bad that's there. But again, I love the image of Kobe on the card. It's Kobe as you remember him. It's young Kobe. It's the right Lakers jersey. It's the right face. The autograph's great. It's graded a 9, but the autograph looks just like you want it to. And I mean, I went for it really hard 9 months ago. I was the bridesmaid when it sold for a lot more than what I paid for it. And so when I saw, this is like 2 months ago, when I saw it hit the auction, have you ever had a card, Rob, where you're like just checking its price every day, even though you're not bidding on it because you're going to wait till the end, but you're like checking it every day, like, how high is it going to go? How high is it going to go? How high is it going to go? And then when it gets to the end, it was higher than I wanted to go. And through a sort of an interesting set of circumstances, I actually found out who the high bidder was. And he messaged me. He's like, "Hey, I've heard you, talk about a lot of Kobe stuff, and wondering how big of a card this is." And he and I had a long conversation about it. And he goes, and after I asked all these questions, he's like, "Well, I didn't realize you were interested in it." And I was like, "Well, it's okay that you didn't know, but I am." And he's like, "Well," and I said, "Honestly, though, you've already placed a higher bid than I'm willing to place." And he said, "Listen, I didn't mean to put you in a funny situation here, and I feel bad because you're like this nice guy who's telling me all this stuff, but like, here was my bid. If you wanted to outbid me, now you know what it is." And I looked at it and I thought it was less than I had placed a bid for the previous time. And I just in the end said, I have to have that card. And I knew it was doable. I pulled out the spreadsheet and like added up all the things in my collection that I'd have to move to go get it. And it's really hard, Rob, you know, when you've got a bunch of stuff that's in your collection, right? I'm not some like super wealthy guy. I had to move cards that I loved for a card that for me was like a top of my collection sort of card, right? And a card that I mean, I don't want to like be like, oh, like, ooh, look at this. It was the card that I wanted, and so I was willing to do it. And we could talk about the card a bunch more, but that's a little bit of the story.
That is unbelievable. I mean, you know, to think about you really trying to narrow it down in your mind what to you and what historically, even if I, because this is a card that I think most collectors don't even know about.
They don't
They
know.
don't even know about it, right? It's not like you were chasing a Kobe PMG, or it's not like you were
Right.
chasing, you know, some sort of flawless RPA or
Right.
something that is just really, really known. You were really, you went digging. It's like the equivalent of going to a card show and digging in the dollar boxes, right? Like you were truly digging and saying, you know what? I want to find something that is going to be historically relevant to, even if it's not so much to the hobby, but to you and to Kobe's legacy and to the legacy of cards. That's amazing. And it feels like really it kind of turned into the perfect storm of this guy contacting you and being like, you know what, listen, this is what I'm planning on, you know, bidding on. And you being like, wow. Because when you were talking about have I ever had something that I was looking at and wanted to bid on and
Yes,
watching
I know
every
you have.
day, like that's how I was 6 months ago with the George Mikan photo match, type one
Yep,
photo,
I
right?
remember it.
And yep, so I was watching that thing every single day. I'm watching that thing. I'm looking to see what it's at. And I know you and I had discussed it a little bit actually the week of, and I had moved I think one or two cards just to have what I had hoped would be enough cash for it. And if I like I wish I knew exactly what the underbidder was likely going to bid. So that way, you know, because like just today, actually, before I went on with you, I'm on Heritage. I'm looking at all the Type 1 photos that sold. They had a huge sale last week of just some of the most amazing and historical Type 1 photos I've ever seen. And and I was saying to myself, man, I wish I knew what all of these would have went for, because if I knew what the high bidder was going to bid, like that can totally change the way that you plan for a card or
Mhm.
or or a type 1 photo or some sort of memorabilia, right? So I think for him to reach out to you, that was like awesome.
It was awesome. It was also I've had people sort of who've been like, "Oh, this could have been, somebody was trying to take advantage of you," and that's not what happened, right? He really wanted this card, and he approached me because it's really a small fraternity of people who are after certain types of cards, right? And so, in general, when a really big Kobe goes up, I generally get some messages about it from people who are looking to bid on the card. The thing that I'll say to Rob, you mentioned the PMG Green. PMG Green sold for $2 million, and it sold several times for close to that. That card is so recognizable to so many people within the hobby. I've had people ask me, like, Adam, you've got all these big Kobe's. Why don't you have any of the big 90s stuff? I've really like tried to be true to what I want, right? And I respect the heck out of those cards. They're amazing. And some of my favorite people in the whole hobby collect those cards. But for me, like that era is Jordan's era. You know, the
Wow.
it is. It
Hold
is.
on. That is amazing that you look at it that way.
I do. I don't like I've got a chrome refractor, I've got a credentials. There's a few other ones that I have, but I don't gotta be true to me, right? Like I don't collect stuff. Like I want to buy the stuff that I want to buy. I want to actually do what I say. And I always say collect what you like. Like I've got a Jordan PMG. I've got a Jordan, Gold Fusion. Those are like along with the Kobe, the two big Kobe's I have,
Yeah.
like my 4 biggest cards in my collection. I have those cards. I love those cards. That is the Jordan era. That is Jordan's era. But this card, like, I love because there's 9 Logo Man, right? Again, the first Logo Man ever, right? What if they had just made 3 and they made a Kobe autograph, a Jordan autograph, and a Jay Williams autograph? It'd be like 3 of the biggest cards ever. But because they made 3 of each guy, I think it doesn't take the value down to nothing, obviously, because by far and away the most I've ever spent on a card. But like that Kobe, like, would you rather have Kobe in his 4th year in the NBA or 5th year in the NBA, or Jordan as a wizard? What we've seen is the prices on the Kobe's have been significantly higher than on Jordan. And some people might say, oh, no, it's got to be Jordan. Jordan's always the best. Maybe it is, but that hasn't been the way that the prices have gone on that card. And for me, I love the Jordan. I would love to own that card. Matt owns one of them. I don't know where the other 2 are. I wanted to own the Kobe though. And so, it may not be, Rob, it may not be a card that, to your point, that everybody knows about. But when I rather go after somebody that lots of people, like a card that everybody knows, like this big PMG or something like that, or something like this, it's the first Logo Man auto. To me, it's not close. Like, I totally wanted to own the one that I got, but these other ones sell for a lot more. So I think the majority of the hobby really disagrees with me on that, and that's okay. But that's really how I feel, and I couldn't be happier, man. I really couldn't. I know we don't have a lot of time, but I'll just add real quick this point. I had to let go of some cards I never anticipated letting go. In fact, every card I sold, I didn't anticipate letting go. It was all collection stuff, right? It was the Dirk gold, 24 karat gold, at a Fleur Brilliance, the KG PMG, which is my best 90s KG by a long shot. Both of my LeBron James exquisite auto patches. It was my credentials sheet. It was like 50 grand worth of Harry Potter cards that I had no interest in letting go at all. It was a ton of Eminent stuff that I've owned since 2016 that I never intended on letting go. And even a few Kobe cards that were less important to me. Like, I had to let go a ton of crap that I had no interest in ever letting go. And so I've had people sort of look at me and go, gosh, was it worth it? And I don't feel good about the cards that I let go. I didn't want to let them go. But the question that you have to ask is, do I want this more or do I want this more? That's all that matters, right? Which of these 2 things do I want more? And some people say, well, what do you think is going to increase the most in value? Again, I don't think about that. I really don't think about it. I'm asking myself, what do I want the most in my collection for the longest time? And I have, like, I'm sad about it, but I have 0 regrets. It was the right decision. And anyway, I feel great about it.
And what keeps on going on in my head is the fact that, I'm talking about, I kind of made the analogy of like really digging in the dollar boxes and trying to dig deep, right? And I think it's genius on so many levels. Obviously it's just incredibly rare and incredibly scarce. I think it it says a lot about the you as a person, but just in terms of like the collector of like, what kind of collector are you? Are you the kind of collector that wants cards that are coveted, or are you the kind of collector that wants cards that you've put in the work to realize how important they
Right.
are? Also, on another front, by going with a card that is less in the mainstream, I would say that like you're not having to worry about bidding against like 15 different millionaires who are trying to go after that same exact card like you would maybe like the PMG like we had talked about, or a couple others, so really I'm not going to say this was below the radar, but I don't think this is the kind of card that I think you do need to take a couple minutes to educate like the hobby on like this is why this card is so significant.
Yeah, I do think though that I would add this, like the one that I was telling you about, the headband one. It's a BGS 9. Like, it sold for close to $1 million. So
Oh, I know. I messaged you about that. I
yeah, that's
remember.
right.
I don't know if
That's
you
right.
remember the DM, but I had sent you a screenshot, and I'm like, "Is this the one that you purchased?" Because How did it go from like $850,000 down to what you got it for? And I was like, if I'm, and I think I even said, like, listen, if I'm getting too personal or asking, if I'm trying, if it feels like I'm getting too much in your business, then just leave me on red, basically, you know. And you
Yeah,
were like, actually, there's three different versions of
right,
this, and the one that I got is this. And immediately in my head, I'm like, even though I know you don't necessarily think about, value is not the main point of your collecting,
right.
I know for a lot of us, we want our collection to be worth money. If it all went to zero,
True.
we'd be pretty bummed, right? And our wives would probably be pissed. But in my head, I'm like, wow. So the exact, not the exact, but the same card as yours, just a different version of it, um, different picture and everything, went for that much. That tells me
Yeah.
that your card potentially that's the ceiling. Because
Yeah.
in these super rare cards, in these super, super, super rare cards, I've seen more often than not, a lot of times the condition doesn't even matter as much when you're talking about a one of one. Because really, what you have is a one of one. I don't look at it as a one of three. I look at it as a one of one. So like the condition doesn't always matter, right? I mean, you can get it slabbed as authentic and go from there.
I feel like the hobby's progressing and and it might not feel like this to a lot of people, but I feel like the hobby's progressing in its ability to understand how important provenance and significance is rather than condition. Um,
Yeah,
and
I agree.
some of the things that we see on like some of the data services don't necessarily show that's the case. That's probably true. But I am a big like qualitative guy. Like when I talk to people and I hear what people want, right? When people actually are like looking for, it's not it's not about just having the thing that everybody knows what it is. It's about having the thing that has actually like a real story behind it. Um, I I again I like the fact that it sold for I think it's 960 grand or something like that. The first time that the time that it sold during the peak, and that it came up, and that mine there's KB1, KB2, and KB3. Mine is KB3. The fact that it came up in a time where it's come up several times and been sold a couple times, to me, Rob, it always has to make sense with both my. I've said this for probably 20 years. Whenever I buy something, I want to feel like it makes sense with both my head and my heart. It has to make sense logically. I have to feel strongly about it as like an investment, but I have to really want the thing. And in this case, like I felt really strong about both. I But the great part about it is I don't have any intention on ever selling it, and I think I've proven. I think every card that's in my top 10, I don't think I've sold a card out of my top 10 in like 5 years. I just
Wow.
don't ever. I never sell my biggest cards, and so I've had to
Wow.
sell some smaller cards along the way, but not even smaller cards, like some really big cards. But I've done a pretty good job now of being able to say, look, these are my biggest cards. I'm keeping this and I'm never letting it go. I'm pretty proud of that.
It's
Um,
yeah. No, that's
I,
awesome, man.
I would encourage anybody to do the same, because once you let go, even though somebody might say, well, your PMG or your Kobe Gold is probably worth, I don't know, at its peak, it was probably like $600,000 card. It's probably not worth anything close to that today. It's still like, I think, pretty well into the six figures, but um, like, do I regret not selling that? I don't regret not selling it. Like I want to own the card. And it was never about just making as much money as I could. It was never about leaving somebody else holding a bag. I never want to leave somebody else holding a bag. I want to leave everybody feeling good. So anyway, I
Yeah.
digress.
No, no, and listen, man, so many great points, and I know we're gonna be wrapping up in a couple minutes, but when you were talking about how the hobby has really, I think, evolved to the point where it's not so much about what's the most popular card and the best and highest grade, right? Like I think of a couple things were coming to mind as you were talking. And one, it's vintage collectors saying buy the card, not the grade. Love that. That saying's as old as time, but it feels like there's been a bigger push for that in the last 18 months or so,
For sure.
especially since it feels like we're in a junk slab era and there's so many PSA 10s out there of cards that probably will be worthless, in the future. And so I've been hearing that more and more and more and more. And also, you get guys like, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Brent Ware on Instagram. He's at Deep Value Investor, and he is someone that he goes to the extreme with it. He talks about the Pareto principle and stuff, and he goes to the extreme with it. And I'm not saying I buy everything that he sells, but I had him on my podcast on episode 204, and basically, like, his Instagram stories every single day, it feels like is really trying to educate people on, like, why would you buy a PSA 10 of this Mike Trout out of 100 when you could buy the PSA 8 gold out of like 10 or out of 49? He's like, and he kind of puts it out like that. And he's like,
I
stop
agree.
buying stop buying the slab, buy the card.
Let me stop you real quick, Rob. I agree with Brent completely on this. He one of the things that he showed a lot is like, here's a gold, and here's, so the gold's out of 50, and then here's something like the blue that's out of 100. I think it's like out of 100.
Yeah.
And this one's the blue's a PSA 10, and the gold's a BGS 9.5. And the gold and the blue will sell for more because people love PSA so much. I think what Brent gets at least the thing that I've sort of taken from what he said a lot, is there's a lot of people who are really collecting the grade and the holder that it's in. And the thing that I would say to Brent is, while I don't do that and I don't agree with that, I'm comfortable with people collecting how they want. And so the fact that people just really want PSA 10s, good for them. I actually don't think, Rob, I own a PSA 10. I have to think about it for a while. I don't care at all. Like, in any way, the majority of my cards in my collection, I would want to own it regardless of the condition. In fact, I don't think I own a single card at this point that's valuable because of its condition, right? Because there's like the variables. There's two variables for white. There's multiple variables, but I always talk about multiple variables, right? There's rarity, like the card's rarity, and then there's the rarity that's created by the condition that it's in. And those are the two things that really drive value. I don't own a single card at this point that's valuable because of condition. I don't, not one. And I really don't think I own one card like that, because, and now I may be wrong, and that those things may continue to grow. But Rob, there was a time, I know we're out of time. Let me just tell you a story quick. There was a time about like 8 years ago when we had seen a number of scandals in grading, and stuff got into holders that shouldn't have gotten into holders, and sort of everything was brought into question. Autographs were graded that were altered, patches were graded that were altered, trim cards, and it's a lot of that stuff still happening today. And my thesis at that point was, wow, I'm not sure that we actually know that grading is right a lot of the time. And I think we feel that probably still to this day to some degree, even though there's some things that we feel a lot better about today. We still don't really know, and there's all these old slabs that we're not sure about. And again, I just like to collect the rare stuff that doesn't have a lot of other similar cards of. But I looked at all of it and I was like, I think you should just get into the stuff that's super rare. And I did that, and I went into I collected a whole bunch of eminence stuff at that point, and I still own most of it. And that stuff's done pretty well. But you know what did way better? What did way better was like base prism PSA 10s and silvers, and like these cards that 10x, 20x, 100x during the boom. And I just remember watching it going like, I watched as a spectator. It was the weirdest thing because I could see it all happening, and I was like, man, you probably make a lot of money on that. And I just was like, but I hate it. Like, I don't like it. I don't think it's real. It's clearly like the market's shifting because all these people are coming in, but this isn't like interesting at all. And so despite the fact that I felt like I could make a lot of money doing it, I just left it alone. I didn't feel, because again, I'm not in it to just go make a bunch of money. I know people don't believe me when I say that, but it's true. Like, it doesn't make any difference to me whether, if there was an opportunity right now to go do something that was not interesting and I could make 20 grand on it in a year, I wouldn't even consider it. I had no interest in it. I just don't care.
Wow.
I know that's insane. Is that insane? Is it insane that I just don't care about that stuff?
I mean, yes and no. I love it, and I
It's
think a
insane.
lot of us aspire to be there one day. But I think the one thing that is shocking to me, and we'll wrap up with this, but is the fact that not that I'm counting your money or anything, but it's safe to say you probably have a 7-figure collection, right? So you have a 7-figure collection, and you don't own a single PSA 10, right? And it's not like you're a vintage collector. It's not like you're primarily vintage and you're sitting on a bunch of Babe Ruths here.
Nope.
You're a primarily modern collector who has a massive collection financially, and you don't own a single PSA 10. What that says to me is buy the card, not the grade.
For me, maybe, but again, I think I was wrong 8 years ago. I think the market did something to me that didn't ever make any sense, other than that it was because there were all these people coming in. That does make sense. And I do own, like, I own a Kobe Bryant autograph that's a BGS 10, which is, I think most people consider better than and there's one of that card, and there's
Yeah.
like 5 of the PSA 10. So, and again, I know you've got to go, but I'm not telling. I just want to be really clear. This is what I was trying to talk about with Brent. I agree with Brent on pretty much everything he's saying about those things, but I wince a little bit because I don't want to influence how people think and people collect. And maybe some people just really love the PSA 10. And if that's what they love, I think that they should collect that, even though I don't think that's like I see a PSA 10 and a PSA 9, and I see a PSA 9 sell for 20%. I'm like, why in the world would I choose that other thing? Like, it doesn't even cross my mind. But again, that's because I'm a collector, and I don't care about, I just don't care about the grades as much.
Yeah.
You know what I care about, Rob, more than I think a lot of people do, is when a card was graded. I love stuff that was graded forever ago. I do. I have a card that was graded first out of all of the specific of that card. It was the very first one that was graded, and therefore I know that the patch is real. I know the autograph's been untampered with. I know that it was actually pack pulled. It's worth a fraction of what ones that came afterwards, that have been graded afterwards, sell for. Those ones happen to have bluer autographs and nicer patches. And like, I look at it and I'm like, but that thing has the provenance. Like, I know when it was encapsulated. I know nobody has touched it in all that time. I truly would rather own mine than these other ones that are worth 2, 3, 4 times as much money. And
Wow.
and I know I'm insane for feeling that way, but like, I have to hold true to like what I believe in. And I believe the market's messed up in a lot of ways, but it's always been messed up. So maybe it'll never correct to what I think, but I still have to live by those thoughts. Anyway, I'll zip it now. That's it for me.
I love it. Adam, listen, it was a pleasure having you on. If anyone wants to reach out to you, if they want to listen to your podcast, if they want to check out the magazine, how can they contact you?
Basketball Card Fanatic Magazine is at bcfmag.com. The Basketball Card Podcast, you can just Google it. Always, of course, hit me on Instagram at the Real 27 Guy. Always welcome to ask me questions. I'm happy to. I'd love to engage. Things. I'm sure it's the same thing for you, Rod. There's so much going on now. I don't. There's a lot of messages that come in every day, and I don't get to everything anymore. But if you ever have any questions, especially anything that we talked about on today, please reach out. I'm always happy to help if I can. I will.
Adam, man, it was a pleasure having you on. It's always fun talking with you.
You too. Thank you, Rob.